Every form of motorsports has an iconic rivalry that goes to shape that said sport. For Formula 1, it was Alan Prost versus Ayrton Senna.
And he's looking for, and he's going through. Ouch! Oh my goodness!
In NASCAR, it was Richard Petty versus David Pearson.
I believe we'll take the checkered flag. No, he did not make it. Petty has his car going. Pearson's going to win it. Oh.
And for monster trucks, it was the father of freestyle, the icon of the sport, Dennis Anderson, versus the creative chaos, the now 14-time world champion, Tom Meents. And over the years, this rivalry has influenced the industry and the sport as a whole. These two drivers took the sport to the next level and have characterized many people's childhoods over the many years they have fought together. Rivals on the track and friends off the track. This is the incredible story of what many call the greatest rivalry in motorsports.
Does it very, very smooth, but so does Tom Meents. He's got some horsepower. Let's see.
It's close, but it's Meents. Tom Meents.
He's got no
And Dennis Anderson will win his third World Racing Championship. They're both scampering. What else would you expect from these two?
To anyone who didn't grow up watching the sport and especially haven't watched monster trucks in general, it's hard for people to believe that this is the greatest rivalry in motorsports. But this story goes much deeper than you'd think, and that's exactly what we are going to cover today. Let's start off with introducing the drivers. Dennis Anderson was born on October 14th, 1960 in Norfolk, Virginia. He began his motorsports career in 1982, where he created the iconic Gravedigger. The name Gravedigger came from a famous quote that Anderson had said.
I told old Gary Todd, I said, I'll take that junk and I'll dig you a grave.
However, Gravedigger didn't start out as a monster truck, nor did it have its iconic spooky paint job. Instead, it was a 1951 Ford pickup truck and started out life as a mud truck that would compete in various events across the country. Eventually, that turned into the blue and silver Gravedigger in 1984, which started the transition of the truck transforming from a mud truck to a monster truck. By 1986, it was a full-blown monster truck, and Anderson had introduced the spooky paint job we all know and love today. And since then, Anderson has turned Gravedigger from just another monster truck to arguably the most recognizable and famous monster trucks of them all. He's ingrained the Gravedigger name in monster truck royalty, and the truck has just recently celebrated its 40th anniversary. His children have gone on to drive, 4 of them currently competing on the circuit. On the other side of the coin, we have Tom Meents, who was born on July 10th, 1967 in Paxton, Illinois. Meents' career in motorsports started out driving the mud racer known as Shake Me. This then caught the attention of Paul Schaefer, driver of the Monster Patrol monster truck. Through their friendship, Tom landed a driving opportunity with Schaefer, and this is what put the foot in the door for Meents to get to where he is today. Meents had campaigned numerous trucks over the years and won a record-setting 14 world championships. But his impact on the sport isn't limited to his number of trucks he's driven or championships he's won. He's participated in groundbreaking stunts and advanced the sport as a whole, and now teaches the up-and-coming drivers at Monster Jam University in his hometown of Paxton, Illinois. So now that we know our protagonists, it's time we delve into the thrilling rivalry of these two drivers. When Meents and Anderson had first met, they didn't share the same beliefs and opinions of each other that they do today. Dennis Anderson had been competing for just more than a decade by the time Tom Meents had debuted. Anderson believed that Meents was cocky, arrogant, and in general just didn't really like him. And in the defense of Meents, every rookie driver usually likes to talk up a big game, especially when they start out driving. This was on full display in Orlando in 1999, where Anderson and Meents had faced off in the semi-final round. Before the race, Meents had started this now hilarious trash talk, where Dan Moriarty tells Tom he's facing Dennis Anderson and the Gravedigger, before Meents replies with,
You got Gravedigger in the semifinals.
Grave who?
Gravedigger? Who's that? Oh, yeah, I seen him on TV one time. Yeah, he's pretty good, isn't he?
Meents would end up defeating Anderson and would win the whole racing competition that night. At the 1999 unnumbered World Finals in St. Louis, they faced off in round 2. And this clip is notable for Scott Douglas referring to their rivalry as
I tell you, this is now the rivalry in monster truck racing.
Anderson would go on to win that race and later the 1999 Points Championship. That comment made by Douglas would go on to set the precedent for years to come. The 2000 season was the prime example of the dichotomy between Anderson and Meents had truly started to flourish. It was a huge year for both of them. Meents had just debuted Goldberg and Anderson had debuted the newly rebuilt Gravedigger 7. Despite both debuting new pieces, both had very different levels of success. While Meents had debuted the fresh, beautiful, and frankly unstoppable beast that was Goldberg 1, Anderson's new piece, while also being beautiful, was nothing but trouble. Constantly breaking, and in one case actually injuring Dennis. It was a frustrating season for Anderson. Tom Meents would just dominate every show he was at, either winning racing, or just freestyle, or in a few cases winning both. When he didn't win, he went out in style, like when he lost to Scott Hartzog in Gunslinger in Orlando, and had a spectacular crash at the end that in all honesty took a fair bit of the spotlight away from Hartzog. Meents would continue his success at the World Finals by winning the first ever official Monster Jam World Racing Championship. For freestyle, Meents would crash early, although finish third in the standings. In freestyle, Anderson would show the fans why he was the king of freestyle, because he would be the first ever world freestyle champion. After the night settled and champions were crowned, both Anderson and Meents stood in the stage area with their championship hardware, both praising their teams, each other, and the people behind the scenes that put the event on. After this, the two shook hands, with Moriarty making the following statement.
Standing between these two guys in the victory stand, it's really like monster truck racing and freestyle is whole. The man who brought it to where it is, the man who brings it to the next level.
A year later, and things had changed. Gravedigger 14 was Anderson's replacement, and while it first seemed to have issues, it was quickly figured out. What's interesting is that a year later, Meents debuted a new chassis, Goldberg 2. Tom's season started strong but got a bit rocky in the middle third. He went winless at 2 televised events in a row during a time where he was guaranteed to win at least one event per show. Dennis started off decent in 12, but not amazing. This was when the start of the season was in the later months of the previous year, and 14 was giving him a bit of trouble early on. He got used to it pretty quickly though, and did alright until Tom had his slump, where Dennis really hit his stride. For the World Finals, Meents had marched through the bracket, even causing controversy at one point as he hit the pole that caused the water pipe to burst, resulting in the impromptu racing style on the straightaway, and would go on to win the racing championship for his second year in a row. When it came down to freestyle, Meents and Anderson really wanted to win badly. Meents had laid down an insane run that was filled with wow moments, crazy moves, and just really solid action. And when Anderson had flipped over early, Meents knew that he was the champ. What would happen next would end up defining the next direction of not just the two's relationship, but the sport as a whole. Dennis Anderson wasn't satisfied with his freestyle performance and brought out 2 more Gravediggers that he would just total for the amusement of the fans. And after seeing what Dennis had done with Gravedigger 12, parking on top of Goldberg 2, Meents knew that he had to bring out Goldberg 1 and do the same thing. He would hit a dormant Gravedigger 7, snap the tie rod, and flip over. In an emotional moment, the two very best hugged it out in the center of the track. This encore had very mixed opinions, and to be frank, the whole event had people split as a whole. But the reason as to why I think this is important to mention is that I believe that this was the moment they finally found their mutual respect for each other, while also single-handedly pushing the envelope in the direction of where the sport was heading to. The most interesting part of that dichotomy that Anderson and Meents shared was how deep it went. For most rivalries, there can be lots of bitterness, sometimes mutual respect, and lots of drama. I couldn't name a better example than in Formula 1, when Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen fought for the 2021 title. While they share mutual respect for each other, they both had moments of controversy, even as far as the very last race on the very last lap having a controversial move being the deciding factor for Verstappen's first F1 championship. It's important that they do good for their team, so playing dirty by any means necessary in winning a championship, regardless if it's ethically wrong. That's not how it's like with Anderson and Meents. Sure, on the track they hate each other, and they want to stop at nothing to win. They'll try to outdo each other to make sure that they leave as the winner or champion. But when they aren't driving, they're best friends or even brothers. The way they act and the way they speak to each other isn't some fake persona they're putting on for the camera. Their love and respect for each other is real and genuine, and this makes watching those two battle it out all the more interesting. The other half that makes this rivalry so interesting is that Anderson and Meents had added numerous drivers to be part of that rivalry. The other half of the rivalry is the trucks. Gravedigger, the most famous monster truck, versus Maximum Destruction, the most dominant truck in Monster Jam history. And whoever was driving these two trucks would keep that rivalry at any and every show they were at. The rivalry between the trucks isn't so much as a replacement for the main feud, it's more so an addition to the existing rivalry. In terms of the mutual respect Meents and Anderson shared, look no further than the January Houston 2008 show. Both Anderson and Meents had laid down amazing runs, both tied for the freestyle win, despite the general consensus that Meents' run was better. And Anderson, despite being a competitor and Meents' rival, agreed. To show his great sportsmanship, he handed him the trophy and stated,
What about this? Tom, we're not sharing a trophy, dude. That one goes to your house, and the next one's gonna be mine.
If this was any other sport, you would have taken that trophy and celebrated. A win is a win. But Anderson felt like his win was undeserving and wanted to be a great sportsman and a true friend, admitting he was outperformed. The 2010 season marked the beginning of a new decade, a decade that would further change the course of Monster Jam forever. The two were part of the first ever Monster Jam Live Atlanta, where it was broadcasted to Speed TV from the Georgia Dome. The two would face off in the championship race, where only narrowly Meents had defeated Anderson in that race, and Meents would end up winning freestyle after Anderson had finished just 4 points shy of Meents' score of 40. Anderson would go on to win racing in both the December 2009 Minneapolis show and in Orlando. In addition to his wins in Atlanta, Meents would win racing in San Antonio, double down in Indianapolis, and won freestyle in St. Louis. When it came down to the World Finals, tensions were high, but I don't think anyone expected to witness what was in store. The top 5 qualifiers had practically set times that were the same. Mark McDonald and Tom Meents were the two fastest, both setting times of 16 seconds, with Adam Anderson, Dennis's son, John Zimmer, and Dennis Anderson himself setting times of a 16:03. With these two finishing that quickly, it meant that they were placed on the opposite sides of the bracket. Both drivers marched through the bracket, Anderson consistently laying down clean passes and cracking the whip against John Zimmer in round 3, while Meents had used his amazing technique of coming from behind in 2 races. Heading to the championship race, the rivalry was as intense as ever. In the 2 previous times Meents and Anderson had faced off for the racing championship, both of them weren't in the championship race. In 2002, they faced off in the semi-finals where Meents came out the victor. and the other time was 2006, where they faced off in round 2, which saw Anderson come out on top. 2004 looked like Meents and Anderson were set to duke it out in the championship race. However, Meents clipping the center jump would destroy his chances of facing Anderson. This time it was different. They were both in the finals, and it was for all the marbles. Would Tom Meents earn a record-setting 9 world championships, or would Dennis Anderson win his 4th world championship? There was only one way to find out. In what can only be described as the single most intense championship race, only just second to 2022's Hollywood-esque championship race, Dennis Anderson had trumped Tom Meents to win his 4th world championship, and probably his most meaningful.
And Dennis Anderson will win his 3rd World Racing Championship, but I don't know if any has ever been sweeter. He takes his arch rival Tom Meents and knocks him out.
Big hug for his crew chief, Dustin Brown.
I think it's important to highlight the championships that these two would earn over the years because in some way it contributed to the rivalry. Whether they competed against each other directly or indirectly, their feud is what characterized the World Finals in its glory days. We talked about 2000, Anderson and Meents being world champions, Tom Meents doubling down in 2001 and 2002, Anderson not even being present in 2003 due to an injury sustained earlier in the season, and Meents had terrible luck and mechanical gremlins that saw him leave Vegas for the first time empty-handed. In 2004, Anderson won his first racing world championship against Pablo Huffbaker in Blacksmith. Then, in freestyle, Tom Meents tied with Lupe Souza and Medusa to earn Meents' 6th world title, and both left 2005 with no championships. In 2006, it was almost a parallel of 2000, only this time they switched the titles. Anderson would claim his 3rd world championship by winning racing, and Tom Meents would edge out Dennis Anderson in freestyle. In 2007, they both didn't win championships, though Anderson came very close in both racing and freestyle. In 2008, they also won no championships, with Meents unable to fix his truck in time for the championship race. In 2009, Tom Meents won his 8th world championship in racing. Then in 2010, we already discussed the two facing off for the world championship, Anderson claiming his 4th world title. From 2011 to 2013, Tom Meents would win back-to-back racing championships from 2011 to 2012, and won freestyle in 2013, with Anderson not winning any championships during this time. Both would go on without winning a championship for the remainder of the World Finals they both competed in, with Meents almost winning racing and freestyle in 2014, but to no avail. No one really knew at the time, but 2016 was the final time the two really faced off against each other, for not just at the World Finals, but really the season as a whole. The first quarter had Meents compete on the 2nd edition of the FS1 Championship Series, and Anderson compete in various untelevised shows, although Anderson would double down at Glendale, which was shown on TV but not part of the FS1 tour. At the World Finals, they would share their last race together. While not pretty or clean in any sense of the word, the two still put on an insane race that saw Meents make it even with Anderson by winning the race. And just a cool fun fact, in the 4 races at the World Finals the two have competed against each other, both have remained in the same lane, Anderson in the left, Meents in the right. Anderson would finish 3rd in freestyle in what arguably should have been his 5th world championship, with an amazing run that had 2 great saves and just had really good momentum, with Tom Meents finishing 19th. Anderson was a regular competitor on the overseas tour, predominantly for the European shows, with Meents only being at Rotterdam, Netherlands, and Stockholm, Sweden. The new season of 2017 was imminent, and I don't think anyone was expecting what would happen in this season. 2017 was the end of this rivalry. Well, sort of. Both drivers would suffer injuries that ultimately took them out of competition, though only one driver would return to competition. At New Orleans, Tom Meents had suffered a back injury due to suspension problems on his truck. He would have surgery and miss out on action until his return in June. And as a strange yet eerie coincidence, Anderson earlier in that year was also out with an injury. In his last ever freestyle run, he would attempt a backflip that saw him under-rotate and land directly onto the cage. He was transported to a local hospital after the crash and would not get back behind the wheel. This meant that for the first time ever, both Anderson and Meents would miss out on the Monster Jam World Finals. As previously mentioned, Meents would make his return in June of that year. From there, he would continue competing regularly in Monster Jam, winning various points championships, and had since claimed 3 world championships. The first 2-Wheel Skills Championship in 2019, as well as Defender's 2-Wheel Skills Championship this year by winning that championship as well, and winning Freestyle, which he hadn't done since 2013, almost 10 years ago. In 2023, he will compete on Stadium Championship Series Red, celebrating 30 years of driving monster trucks and 20 years of Max D with an awesome new design, and will hopefully go on to win more championships in the new year. Tom Meents also teaches and trains new drivers at Monster Jam University to prepare them for their Monster Jam career. Near the tail end of 2017, Anderson had stated he was finished driving monster trucks. He had stayed true to that with the exception of campaigning the Extreme King Sling ride truck, and had also did a parade lap in Orlando 2021 for his Hall of Fame induction ceremony. Speaking of which, he was inducted into the Monster Jam Hall of Fame officially in 2021 as part of the 2020 class, which he shared with Scott Douglas. The only part of the rivalry that are kept up is the truck versus truck aspect. Anderson's sons and daughter, as well as the rest of the Gravedigger team, along with Meents and his teammates, still try to keep the tradition going. But I'll be honest, it just isn't the same. Don't get me wrong, the rivalry is still here and it's still strong. But when one half of the dichotomy is not even in the championship picture, or even really the competitive scene in general, it just doesn't give the same feeling. As great as it is to see Meents still competitive against the new generation and Anderson's children competing to a high level, 2 of which are world champions already, I just don't think that it will ever compete with the rivalry that Dennis Anderson and Tom Meents had shared. The truth is, this rivalry was and is more than just a lack for a better term, a rivalry. It was my childhood. It was our childhood. Many grew up watching other more famous sports or motorsports, like watching Jeff Gordon and Dale Earnhardt, or Michael Schumacher versus Mika Hakkinen. For me and many others, it was the battle of the Titans. The battle of Anderson versus Meents, Gravedigger versus Max D. Good rivalries create tension. Tension creates interest. Interest leads to good television. And there was an abundance of that during Monster Jam's prime. Many say Monster Jam has passed its prime, and this is due to issues ranging from a change in direction, a lack of crush cars, or track changes, but regardless of what is speculated, and while I still enjoy the current Monster Jam product today, I will say that the reason I believe to people not enjoying Monster Jam as much as they did in its prime is due to the absence of this rivalry. It made for exciting television day in and day out. Every year people wanted to see the 2 titans compete in racing and freestyle, to see who was better. Without this rivalry, or more so without the people behind the trucks, Monster Jam just isn't the same. So now when someone asks you what's the greatest rivalry in motorsports, you can tell them the answer. The answer is Dennis Anderson versus Tom Meents. Without these 2 and their intense, emotional, and thrilling rivalry, I don't think Monster Jam would be as popular as it is today. Thank you everyone so much for watching, and I'll see you all soon with some more Monster Truck content.
The man who brought it to where it is, the man who brings it to the next level. These guys make it all happen year in, year out.